You raise a child with everything you have, and one day you hear the music from his wedding through a door that never opened for you. She lived just one floor below, close enough to hear the vows, but not close enough to be remembered. The bride didn't want her there, and her son, he just stayed quiet. This isn't rare. I've heard too many stories like hers, of mothers being edited out, not with cruelty, just silence. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about a photo taken in a hallway where love should have stood, but didn't. She kept that photo, not for memory, but because it told the truth no one else would say. If you've ever stood in that kind of quiet, just hoping the porch light was still on, you'll understand this one. That morning, I brewed tea I didn't finish, sat at the window with the same view I'd stared at for years. Nothing looked different, but something was. I hadn't touched the Polaroid in years, but I picked it up. Didn't know why. Maybe because the hallway felt full of things I wasn't part of. He once said, "When I get married, I want you to walk me down the aisle too, not just Dad." He was 9. He meant it. But promises, they shrink, don't they? When the people who made them grow taller, and you become just someone they pass in the hallway. A few days before the wedding, though I didn't know it was a wedding, I texted Jason. "Everything okay up there? Sounds like you've got a full house." He replied with one line. "All good. Just prepping for something small. Hope you're well." That was it. No details. No mention of Melissa. No, "We'd love to see you." Just polite distance. The kind that doesn't sting right away. But later, when you're folding laundry and realize you weren't even part of the plan. The kind you can't name. The kind that comes slowly, like someone dimming the lights, one notch at a time, until you're left in the dark and can't remember when it happened. 2 days later, I ran into Melissa in the mailroom. She was wearing soft cream, hair pinned just right. She smiled that tight, distant kind of smile you give a stranger who might ask too much. She said, "We're keeping it really small. Just a few friends. We didn't want to make it complicated." Then she walked away. And I stood there, holding a bag of oranges, nodding like it was fine, like it didn't matter, like I wasn't once the woman who helped raise the man she just married. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask. Because what would I even say? They had already decided. I sat by the window that night, thinking about the time Jason told me, "When I get married, I want you to walk me down the aisle too, not just Dad." He was 12. He meant it. He looked me in the eyes when he said it, and I kept that memory like a bookmark, tucked into the part of my heart where future things live. But sometime between that boy and this man upstairs, I was edited out. No warning, no fight, just removed. And no one noticed. Not even me, until it was too late. I started checking the mail more often, not because I expected anything, just because I hoped for a mistake, a leftover invite, a slip, anything that said, "We meant to include you." But the mailbox only offered coupons and silence. The week it happened, Jason didn't stop by. He didn't call, didn't ask if I was around. I lived one floor below, close enough to hear the music, but not close enough to be remembered. That's what I keep coming back to. Not that I wasn't invited, but that no one thought I would notice. No one thought I would want to be there. No one said, "We thought of you." And that silence, it hurt more than a no, because at least a no means you were part of the question. I
I started getting up earlier. Not for errands, not for sunrise, just to beat the part of the day when the silence grew teeth. I'd sit at the kitchen table with tea I never finished. Toast I didn't want. Let the radio hum low, just enough to pretend the house was still full. I cleaned things that were already clean, wiped the same windows twice, sorted mail that didn't have my name on it, not because it mattered, but because motion feels like meaning when you've been erased quietly. I kept checking the hallway window every afternoon. I told myself I was just enjoying the light. But really, I was hoping to see Jason carrying groceries, a florist van, a tux bag, anything that might say, "You're still part of this." But the elevator never opened on him, not once. One afternoon, I opened the old keepsake box. Inside, a wrinkled crayon drawing that read, "Mom is my favorite person, even when she's mad." A button from his baby jacket, a thank you note from second grade, a pine cone he once swore was magic. I held them like someone looking for a crack in a mirror. Some proof I hadn't imagined at all. I typed a message that night. "Is everything all right between us?" I stared at it, then I deleted it. I didn't want to hear the answer. Maybe I didn't want to confirm what my silence had already whispered. He was slipping away, not fast, not loud, just gently, the way photos fade on a windowsill. The next morning, I stood by the window again. I heard laughter upstairs. It didn't reach me, like joy had learned to skip the floor I lived on. I lit the cedar candle Henry used to burn after dinner. The smell pulled up a memory. Jason curled on the couch, asking, "Will you be at my wedding?" He was 9. I said, "Of course, I'll help you pick the cake." He said, "You can walk me in too, not just Dad." I smiled, tucked that moment into a part of me meant for future things. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of the story. I wasn't written out with anger, just edited quietly, without a scene, without a line. I used to be his favorite character. Now I wasn't in the chapter. Maybe I was never supposed to be. Maybe I was just a placeholder until the story turned. I lived one floor down, close enough to hear life happening, but not close enough to be invited. It started with the quiet, not peace, not the kind that lets you rest. This one felt like a warning. No footsteps overhead, no music, just air that felt like it knew something I didn't. Then came the knock. I heard it through the hallway, 3 soft taps and a door opening upstairs. Later, I saw the flowers. 2 large arrangements wheeled into the elevator. White, pale pink, something that shimmered. I couldn't tell. The man delivering them stood tall, smoothed his shirt before pressing the button for the 18th floor. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. Melissa lived there. Jason, too. I told myself it might be a party, a friend's gathering, some early celebration for spring. But my chest tightened in a way I've learned to trust. When Jason was 10, he told me I had a 6th sense. I think what he meant was, I noticed things before others did. I noticed the silence. I noticed the flowers. And I noticed how no one said a word to me. That night, I opened the drawer beneath the old stereo. It still held Henry's Polaroid, the one he used for birthdays, pancake Sundays, lazy summer days on the back porch. The camera was heavier than I remembered. It fit in my hands like something that hadn't been touched in years. I didn't know why I loaded it, or why I stepped out the door. But I did. One floor up, slowly. My knees reminding me I wasn't as young as I still hoped to be. The hallway on the 18th floor was bathed in warm light. Candles flickered through the half-open doorway. I stayed back, near the end of the hall, hidden in the curve of the wall. Then I saw him. Jason. Straight-backed in a dark blue suit, hair carefully parted, tie perfect. Melissa stood beside him, glowing. They looked framed, like they belonged in a picture someone else was taking. Jason turned. His eyes scanned the hallway. He saw me. We locked eyes. There was no surprise, no guilt, no warmth, only pause. And then he turned away. Not because he didn't see me, but because he did. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. I waited, but no one came. No one said, "Come in, Mom." No one asked, "Why are you standing there?" No one even looked again. I raised the camera. My hands didn't shake. Click. The sound was softer than I remembered. The picture slid out. As it developed, I watched shadows become shapes. Jason, Melissa, the doorway, the string of lights hanging above them like stars, and in the corner, just barely, my silhouette. A blur. That was me. I thought of ripping the photo in half. I didn't, because that blur said everything. It said, I showed up. Even when I wasn't welcome. Even when my name wasn't on an invitation. Even when love had no seat left for me. I went home. The stairs felt steeper on the way down. Inside, the air in my apartment felt stale. I placed the photo on the counter and stared at it. Not a perfect shot. Too far. Too dark. But true. That blur in the corner, that was not absence. That was presence no one acknowledged. And maybe that's worse. No one asked where I was. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. I took out the old photo album. Every page had a story. Jason in overalls, Jason in snow boots, Jason with missing teeth and messy birthdays. The last page was still empty. I'd saved it for his wedding. I slid the Polaroid in. It didn't fit perfectly, a little crooked, a little wrong, but it was real. It was mine. A picture doesn't ask for approval. It just remembers. And I needed to remember that I had been there. Not for them, not for forgiveness, but for love. Because sometimes, love isn't holding hands in a chapel. Sometimes, it's standing outside the door with nothing but memory in your pocket. Sometimes, it's knowing your child looked at you, saw you, and still chose silence. That kind of seeing leaves a mark deeper than forgetting. But I was there. I didn't knock, not because I didn't want to, but because I finally understood. There was no door for me to enter anymore. A week passed. No call, no message, no accidental visit. I didn't expect one. But sometimes I still paused when the elevator dinged. The Polaroid sat on the counter, edges soft, image settling into its forever blur. Jason, Melissa, a golden string of lights above their heads, and in the corner, like an echo that almost didn't make it, me. I stared at it longer than I meant to, long enough to feel the weight of what wasn't said, what never would be. Then I slipped it into a small wooden frame, not for a mantle, not for memory, for a message. I wrote a note, folded it once, Every photo is missing someone. I just didn't think it would be me. I placed both in a plain box, wrapped in soft cloth. No name, no return. Walked to the mailroom, left it for Unit 18B. Didn't check the time, didn't glance back. I didn't send the photo to be remembered. I sent it so I could finally stop remembering. No reaction came, and I didn't expect one, because this wasn't for them. It wasn't even about them. It was about taking myself out of the hallway, about knowing I had shown up even when the door didn't open, and that was enough. Later that evening, I made tea, sat by the window. But this time, I didn't look up. Not at the floor above, not at the windows that used to pull my eyes like magnets. Some things don't need doors to close, only someone willing to stop knocking. The sun touched everything gently that evening. It slid across the windowsill like it had nowhere better to be. I sat in the same chair by the window. Same tea, same quiet. But something in the air had shifted. Not around me, inside. I didn't look up toward the floor above, didn't count shadows, didn't measure distance in elevator dings. I just sat and breathed. Beside me was the photo album, closed, not forgotten, just no longer needing to be opened to prove anything. I had lived the pages, and some chapters are better remembered by heart. The ache didn't leave, but it no longer owned the room. I thought of the hallway, of how many hours I had stood still, hoping love would come back through a door that had already closed. But I wasn't standing there anymore. I had stepped away, not because I stopped loving, but because I finally understood I wasn't erased. I just walked off the page they stopped reading. I didn't need to shout to be real, didn't need to stay in the frame to matter. I reached for a photo, not the wedding, not the one I sent. This one was older. Jason, 7 years old, wearing goggles in the bathtub, laughing at bubbles like they were gold. I smiled, held it softly, let it warm the parts of me that still remembered the sound of that laugh. I didn't wish for anything more. He had been mine, and I had been his, once, and that once was enough. I placed the photo back, stared out at the trees shifting in the breeze. The wind didn't say anything, but it didn't have to. I was no longer waiting to be invited back into the story. I was already living mine, not the blurry corner, not the missing piece, just here, present, enough. Some people leave you without slamming a door, just quieter each day, until one day you realize the silence has shape, and it fits the outline of someone you used to be everything to. If you've ever stood in that quiet, not asking to be let in, just hoping the porch light might still be on, you can leave a piece of that story here, or keep it folded in your heart. Either way, I'll still be here, by the window, tea still warm, wind moving like it remembers something I haven't said aloud yet.